fear of letting go, of not feeling or not missing out and not being connected. Yeah.
FOMO.
FOMO, exactly, yeah. And it affects our mental health. This potential cycle of dependency can trap many young people in a whirlwind of emotions. We often feel left out, anxious, and yet we also feel good for a moment, thanks to that quick dopamine hit from a like or a follow. But it's never long-lasting, and it's never enough. And for many, it can lead to real consequences, such as excessive screen time, disrupted sleep, reduced physical activity, and even strained in-person relationships. And while not everyone experiences the same effects to the same extent, but it does affect many of us in one way or another. Additionally, sorry, I feel like I'm, okay. The constant exposure to idealized, curated content on social media sets unrealistic standards, damaging self-esteem and mental well-being. The constant pressure to maintain an online persona, combined with the chase for social validation, keeps many in a loop of comparison and FOMO. Sadly, these issues are often hidden. Cyberbullying can take many forms, such as spreading fake rumors or body shaming online, adding more fuel to anxieties. Unhealthy comparisons are also common, yet they're swept under the rug because discussing them isn't normalized. For example, I know people who have developed an eating disorder due to unhealthy comparisons online. Not only did it take them a significant amount of time to recover from them, it also took them a significant amount of time to open up about it. And this is just an issue that is all too common.
Well, thank you. I mean, you gave such a beautiful overview of all of the different issues that are resulting from this digital addiction. When I was an adolescent, I remember how terrible it felt to learn about a party happening and not being invited. And now I hear from parents all the time about what it's like for their children to watch in real time on Snap as their friends are all down the block at an event they weren't invited to. And so children are growing up with the normal process of development amplified with digital technology that is creating sort of a rash of emotional exposure that they otherwise wouldn't have. And it's really difficult to navigate as a parent, Mitch, is that right?
It is. I mean, it's hard for all of us who were raised in the era of the telephone or actually going to someone's house and spending time with them, because for young people today, when we talk about reducing their time on social media, it's like they're hearing that they should reduce time with their friends, because being off their device means not interacting with their friends. And those are two very separate things. But to someone who's grown up with technology and with social media, it's very hard to think about, how can I have relationships that are meaningful if I'm not having them through social media? And that becomes very tricky. A few years ago, there was an interesting phenomenon called Finsta. It was the extent to which kids started to recognize that their experiences on Instagram were kind of fake. They felt that what they were seeing was not a real depiction of their friends' lives, and people were trying too hard to have the perfect profile of photos. So they started using a second profile with a fake name, but ironically, with their actual, true, authentic feelings. And that was a way of trying to have that emotionally intimate connection. What's so sad about that to me is that here are kids that recognize there's a problem with social media and it needs a solution. But because all they know is how to interact digitally, the solution was also another digital platform or another digital profile, which just shows us how hard this is for kids to have to negotiate what it's like when they know that something is potentially harmful, but it's the only outlet they know for a very natural, appropriate, and healthy connection they want to have with their peers.
Katie, I want to ask you this question. So, in what ways does device dependency also lead to conflicts? You mentioned earlier the internal conflict with students who know they should be studying, but they can't get off. What other kinds of conflicts do you see?
Well, so teens may experience conflicts with their parents, themselves, and their peers as a result. So our relationships with our parents are impacted. I can say from my experience that this cycle of dependency is not something that most parents can fully understand. That's because we're growing up in a different world than our parents did. In this context, the cliche of a teen slamming the door and shouting at their parents, "You don't understand me," is unfortunately more true than ever. We also face internal conflict. I can tell you that many of my peers struggle daily with controlling how much time they spend behind their screens and feeling down on themselves when they know it's too much and when it has distracted them from things that must get done. And lastly, conflicts with friends can arise easily. Texts and snaps can be misinterpreted. Sensitive or confidential ones shared and forwarded without permission. And we all know that a lot of social media using teens experience frenemies online, stirring up drama on social media.
That, I've heard the example too where, when us older folks on the panel were growing up, there wasn't the risk that there was always a camera around to record your most embarrassing moment, because all kinds of things happen to you that you feel are embarrassing as you're growing up. And I heard from one teacher that, she worried students wouldn't even ask one another to dance because of the fear they would be rejected and that somebody would be recording this moment. So it's radically transforming the experience of childhood and what I think it means to be human. Marco, I wanted to ask you, what are some things you think we can try and do to stay human in this digital environment?
Well, I think a key aspect is regards the moments of our daily life and our life that are key to our development, to our connection, to our also spirituality. These moments are very important to plan in advance, in a sense, because in this environment you have to plan them. They're not, you cannot take them for granted. With other colleagues at my university, we developed this scale called the smartphone pervasiveness scale. It measures how much you use your smartphone in key moments of the day. For example, family dinner, when you wake up, when you go to bed, and we saw empirically that this scale negatively correlate with well-being and with learning outcomes. So the ability to defend these moments, to confine the stimulation of digital media, to be fully present in these key moments of the day and life is probably something very important. And I think we have to educate children even before they have their online devices to plan their activities, and in this planning to find the time for these special and precious moments during the day for relationships, reading, watching something from the beginning to the end, and all these moments that are very, very, really key to our happiness.
Mitch, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. If you remember what it's like when your kids were younger and they were spending time with friends, they really get an opportunity to practice play skills. And in adolescence, they're practicing a very different kind of set of relationship skills that we could just call emotional intimacy. Suddenly, kids are having much more complex relationships with their peers. They can tell their secrets. They are more likely to tell their peers things than their parents. They are forming loyalty and bonds and real sense of connection that you don't see in younger childhood. Research has shown that this is remarkably important. The skills that they learn in how to navigate these complex relationships, well, there's still things that we as adults are still figuring out many, many years later. And our professional relationships and our own adult friendships or romantic partnerships, we are relying on the skills that we learned in adolescence to form emotional intimacy. So now enter social media. What is the experience like on the platforms? How are they building emotional intimacy? Well, they're really not. So the typical experience for many folks, other than texting, is that they might get a notification saying you have 20 likes on something you just posted. It doesn't say who the people are. It doesn't tell you anything about them. It doesn't encourage you to develop any kind of a relationship with them. In fact, it would take many more clicks than any of us would be willing to endure just to find out anything we might have in common with those people. And the metrics that are on there are pushing us to get more followers, more reposts, more attention to our profile. It's exactly the opposite of emotional intimacy. It's depersonalizing the interactions and turning them into numbers. Never before in the history of our species have we reduced our relationships to just numbers. Now imagine a social media platform that did, in fact, try to create humanity and connection. What if it sent a notification that said, your friend is having a hard time. They just posted something. It seems like they're stressed. You should give them a call. Or here's some information your friend posted yesterday. You might want to talk with them about it when you see them in person next. I mean, these would be ways to actually use the platform for good and encourage the development of the skills that are so critical in adolescence. But in addition to all the time that's being spent on social media, we're now taking away all the time that used to be spent to build these relationship muscles, which makes me concerned about what will happen years later when those are the muscles that are needed to succeed at work and in partnerships and in child rearing. And there's just been a lack of practice in how to develop those relationship skills.
I want to repeat back something you said because I think it's very important, and you can correct me if I'm not saying it right, but in child development, these skills need to happen in a sequential way. They build upon one another. So there's critical things that happen during infancy, during toddlerhood, that build. And if you don't have those experiences at those times, it's that much harder to gain those skills at all. For example, there was a small group of infants and toddlers in the UK during COVID whose parents had to work and didn't have access to childcare, and so they put them in front of screens for more than 9 hours a day. And this cohort of children who had developed relational skills with their eyes, were verbalizing, lost the ability to have speech, lost the ability to connect with their eyes. There were some interventions, and some of the children were able to regain that, some of them never did, because that part of early childhood is so critical in developing well-being. So, Mitch, if I can ask you another question, what does the research tell us about what kind of environments are best for children to grow the building blocks that they need for lifelong health?
So we do need kids to have the in-person interactions where they can experience the full range of emotions. One of the things that's so important is that we experience highs and lows and learn how to cope with those things. It is a little bit hard online because we are getting that make-believe version of someone's life. And the truth is, we are all humans who tend to believe what we see. We are built to live in a world where we can react to everything as if it's reality. This is a very new situation for us as humans, where we now have to question a lot of what we see, because a lot of it might not be true. That is not what that teen looks like when she wakes up in the morning. That is not what that family looks like when they spent their whole vacation together. Maybe it was just the photo that made them look that happy. That is not the information that is true, even though it's been forwarded by 70 people already to you. And this is different. And it's not that we're not smart enough to do this. It's that the parts of our brain that process this information are what's called subcortical. It's in the part of the brain that we share with most other mammals to respond to so quickly that we don't even have to think about it. And now for the first time, we actually have to override that automatic response by saying, wait a minute, maybe that's not true. Maybe I don't have to look like that person. Maybe that's not even a person. Maybe that's artificial intelligence. And that's incredibly hard for us to do as adults. Imagine how hard it is for a 12-year-old.
If I can add on this. As a researcher, I often ask to myself if problematic media use is a matter of quantity or quality. So, and it seems to me from what we are saying that both dimensions are relevant, because the quantity dimension is connected to the time that is displaced by this media. Times that should be devoted to other activities, and so the lack of skills that can result from this. But then there is the quality dimension. So the way digital stimuli are constructed. So the thing that they are overabundant, they are fragmented, they are very attractive, and so I think that in digital education we should make adults, but also obviously children, aware of both the dimensions. So being aware of the time that I devote to digital media, at the same time being aware of the dynamics, the feelings that I have when I encounter those kind of contents that are really addictive to me.
I remember my father telling a story in the 1950s. He and his brother were watching a Western on television in black and white, and a cowboy shot the Indian. And my uncle, who was maybe 5 years old, was very upset and said that the Indian had died. And my father said, no, 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 that's an actor. And the child had just seen someone killed. And so in media, we are exposed to information, but as you said so perfectly, Mitch, we have to pause and spend time to process it, which is cumbersome. It's an interruption in our biological wiring. And as you said, Marco, the volume of that now and the scale of it is unprecedented in human history. And it's creating a real interruption in childhood and the opportunities for kids to get to grow and develop the good things about being human. Katie, can you share anything you've observed about what young people are doing to try to stay human and reclaim their humanity?
Okay, so we as teens, many of us, are aware that there is a problem. And I do believe that many of us want to break free from our devices and truly live in the moment. We don't want to be so dependent. We want to be present. So to answer your question, an example can be holding each other accountable. So, for example, especially in social settings, we have friendly reminders for each other to, put the phone away and really engage in the conversation. Having a balance is also really important, such as joining teams and clubs. Pursuing interests and making friends with similar hobbies helps a lot, especially because these activities are in person and face-to-face. And despite all the negatives, there are positive ways to use a device, such as such as staying connected with faraway friends and family. You don't need to do a deep dive Instagram stalk to see how someone is doing or what they're up to. Simply call them.
Use the right technology for the job. So first of all, I want to say I'm sorry. As a parent, I carry enormous guilt that we have created a world where our children are having to deal with this. It seems enormously unfair. And I have so much admiration for your willingness to step in and help us try to solve the problem, although I believe it's the adult's job to solve the problem. Marco, Mitch, what kind of action would you like to see by parents, educators, and the broader society? And just a minute, I'm going to turn to audience questions. If you have any, you can start thinking about them. But do either of you have anything you'd like to share about what you'd like to see us do as a society?
Well, I think that the problematic situation in which we find ourselves can be a positive occasion to explicit what are the human needs that we cannot avoid to have. So what is the really key part of our lives that digital media cannot steal from us? And this is something that we can explicit in education and in the dialogue between institutions, families, school, and I think this is the positive part of this historical moment.
I think that we spend a lot of time, and in the last couple of years, there's been a remarkable amount of dialogue about kids. It might be time that we start to realize that there are some adults that are addicted too. And those adults may be displaying behaviors in front of kids that make it really hard for kids too. So I think that we as adults need to start having the brave conversation that we are also having some difficulties. That might not be a bad conversation to be having with our children. I think that if we shared with them that we sometimes go down a rabbit hole too, and we get online for 5 minutes and discover it's an hour later and we're still scrolling. We have a hard time not listening to the ding sound of a text that might have come while we're at the dinner table. And we want to run away from the dinner table and check and see if it was our boss or our friend or about our plans. And we too look at information online and believe it and compare ourselves to it and feel a little bit badly sometimes about what we're seeing. The truth is, this is not a child problem. This is an all of us problem. And I think that if we work with our children together, we can be support systems for each other. We can come up with coping strategies together. We can have a trip to the ice cream shop where we all leave our devices in the car or at home together. And we show our kids that if we can do it and we're going to help them. But this isn't just about them not being capable or about them having to figure this out by themselves. It actually involves all of us. And I think that we need to start saying that out loud a little bit more often. It also gives us the power to say to the tech companies, we are your consumers. And if you don't take away endless scroll, and if you don't take away the notifications, and if you don't take away the artificial intelligence, we're not going to use your product. And we can vote with our feet, as they say, or in this case, perhaps our fingers. And we can make the decision to force companies to change without any legislation or any other things happening. We can all make that decision today.
Applause, because I think that's very important what you said. We have time for audience questions. I know there's a microphone out there, sir, in the middle.
Hi, my name is Jamil Alimad. I'm a research fellow at Imperial College. And for the last 10 years, I've been working on teaching people how to focus. There was a study done by Harvard about 5-6 years ago that found out that 50% of our waking time, our minds is wandering. And that was, whilst wandering mind is a good thing sometimes, it helps us solve hidden problems. However, excessive mind wandering leads to unhappy mood states. There's a saying, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And the issue, I think, that needs a little bit more attention is teaching people today with all these disruptive tools that we have, how to focus, be it children or be it adults. And I'm working on tools for that very purpose. And I think people that have the control to focus will be able to choose the mood they want to be in. If they want to get into social media for a short period of time, they can choose that. Just like we choose where to move our hands, our legs. If they move out of control, we have a big problem. And I think in whichever way, whether we use mindfulness, which is a very effective way to train people how to take control of our own thoughts and avoid negative mood states, or other ways from meditation, other forms of meditation, even for younger people, it actually helps them take control of their own thoughts and allow them to break their day to useful slots where there is a room for social media or catching up with their friends, but that doesn't take over their whole life. Thank you.
The Atlantic magazine ran an article a couple months ago that referred to the elite college students who couldn't read a book because they had not developed the ability to focus, and they're not reading books in college because they hadn't been required to do that in high school. And I think that builds on what Mitch said earlier about the sequencing of the skills being necessary. Thank you. Steve?
I think this is a fantastic conversation. I've been here for 2 days, and part of what's really inspirational is that we all have different points of view. Some of us are younger, some of us have kids, some of us are faculty, but collectively we all believe that our digital wellness is at risk today. I run the Sustainable Media Center in New York, and I would add another voice to this conversation, which is who's paying for these children to be mistreated? You know, Facebook doesn't print money in the morning. Instagram. They wake up in the morning, checks come in one door, and they are encouraged by the people putting money into that system to mistreat our children. And the people that I know that work at Facebook or at Instagram today, or used to, know that the code is available to make that product dramatically safer. So one of the questions I would ask is, can we name some names of people that we'd like to be part of this conversation that aren't going to be here in the next 2 days, that should be? And I have a list of them. Well, I'm happy to share with you, but I won't say it out loud.
I'll say, generally speaking, advertisers. I think it's, I mean, you know, advertisers are buying ads in environments that are known to be unsafe for children. I think the entire industry knows it has a problem. The PR industry is struggling. They would like these environments to be safer. Nobody wants to advertise their product next to a potential ad for fentanyl or a child sexual solicitation ad or anything like that. So I think you're going to see a great awakening among parents. You know, these blue chip companies and products have kind of looked the other way, but the data is clear. We have a problem with child sexual abuse material on these platforms. We have online bullying. We have extraordinary amounts of hate speech, you know, sexist thing. You know, it's endless. It's endless. So you can name names too.
Yesterday, Jonathan Haidt was talking about religious communities. So an idea is religious leaders. I've never heard something clear from religious leaders about this problem. Catholic leaders, Islam, Jews. So I think there's room for these people to speak out as we want institutions also to speak out.
Any other questions? And there was a student earlier who I know wanted to ask a question, but I don't see. Oh, there he is. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Felix, and I'm 20 years old. We actually went to the same high school, and I heard a bit about your background, and I was informed that you started using social media when you were 14, which is pretty old, because I started really, really early. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about your experience, like starting so late.
Okay, well, it was painful, but I felt, okay, it was really, really tough at first. You know, the amount of judgment I would get, like, you don't have Instagram, or, you know, when someone's asking, oh, what's your TikTok? Sorry, don't have one. Yeah, it was just tough. But, you know, now I'm 16, I'm in the middle of IB. It's hectic. I'm super busy. I'm up here, right? So it's just so many things going on, but now I'm grateful, right? I still don't have Instagram or TikTok. And yeah, I'm truly, truly grateful because I see everyone around me so preoccupied, so just glued to their screens. And it's terrible, right? And just there's so many effects from it. Yeah.
Katie, you said earlier how it's hard for parents to understand exactly how hard it is for children now. And I had a mom contact me once, and she said that she felt like her son was addicted to cocaine that she had given him, because she recognized that that's how addicted he was to his device. And hearing that really broke my heart, and was part of helping me see the kind of scale of change that was necessary. I think we have time for one more question. Is that right?
Hi, I'm Decio. I'm from Brazil. And my question is, what are your considerations? I see a parallel once we talk about this addiction on social media and loneliness that leads to loneliness, is also social change. I'm not talking about social development, because in former times we were big families. We had, this social contact was more intensive. And we see what is going on, and we are having less and less children. So how can we address also this other problem in parallel to social media addiction and this device? Thank you.
Yeah, I think there are a number of ways to invoke social change around this issue, if that's what you mean. And I hope that there are people here that know folks in the entertainment industry, because some of our biggest social movements, whether it's been Moms Against Drunk Driving, whether it's been the use of cigarettes by youth, has really changed dramatically when the entertainment industry has been able to create a narrative, create characters that show us, hold a mirror up to ourselves and show us that there's room to change. And somewhere out there, there's a movie or a series or something that will show how silly the exaggerated teen may be when they are looking online. And kids will start to have a reference point to say, I don't want to be that character. I don't want to be like that. And that can start the movement among teens. I think among parents, we have to do exactly what Julie is doing, which is to get groups of parents together to form a grassroots coalition to fight back. Don't buy the products that are advertising on social media in unsafe ways. Don't get the devices that make parental controls hard to set. And push back with other parents to say, I won't get a device for my kid if you don't get a device for your kid, and at least we'll know a few people. And when they say, but I don't want my kid to be the only one that's not on a device or not on social media, tell them that you have firsthand data that kids who wait before social media get to talk on the stage at Davos.
Marco, would you like to add something?
Yeah. This question was interesting because we have to admit that some of the problematic dynamics we have started much before social media and digital media. Society was already accelerating, but social media and digital media are taking these dynamics to an extreme. Like if they have gone, in a sense, nuclear. And as with nuclear weapons, we have to decide collectively there's a limit, and we have to control this development. So I think the question was really interesting.
Can I just add a personal experience to what Dr. Prinstein just said? My best friend, still best friend, so my parents and her parents had an agreement that exactly what you just said. She won't get a phone until you get a phone, and then her parents said, okay, she won't get a phone until you get a phone. And that's kind of why we're best friends, because we stuck together, right? We had that experience together, and we didn't have phones. So what we did activities. We did swimming. We went to places, and we really bonded. So I just wanted to add a personal experience to that.
That's great.
We have time for another question. I saw your hand up in the front row.
So I'm the mother of Felix, who somehow let him have a mobile phone earlier than 14. But I just wanted to make a comment of also being in Asia. So I think that in order to counter social media is actually to go to the grandparents. The grandparents, many of them do not use social media, and they force a need for face-to-face. And I would encourage, as we're trying to do social change, is to actually go back to family units. The nuclear, the generation of family, and I think it's we're in a calling now to actually go back to our family, to our grandparents, to relatives, where you're forced to do face-to-face. And that's why I'm here with my son here. So yeah, and I'm actually running a Youth Leaders Davos, wishing to also bring voice to the children, to the kids, and also to be here in person. I think it's absolutely essential to development for humanity.
Thank you. It's a wonderful segue to us beginning to close. In 2017, a certain tech entrepreneur who maybe had a front row seat at yesterday's presidential inauguration in the United States said that humans must merge with machines or become irrelevant in an AI age. I started MAMA, Mothers Against Media Addiction, because that is not the future that I want. I think tech can be helpful in very many situations, and I think it's a very powerful tool that we should use when it serves us and serves humanity. But I don't think that technology is the best solution to every problem all of the time. And I believe that what's best for our species and for our planet is for us to stay human. So to close, I'd like to ask each of the panelists, what does staying human mean to you?
It means connecting with one another on an emotional level, not the emotions that we wish to depict on a profile, but on an authentic, emotional level that establishes connection in the ways that only humans can have.
Kind of just to build on that, it's, one example can just be eye contact. It's, I'm making eye contact with each of you, and it's connection, right? So yeah, I think just people need to put their devices away and just live in the moment, and that's what being human is about, right? So.
And I can add being able to connect with our inner selves. And to do this, we need time, we need a plan in this environment where we can do this. And this is key to our development, to our ability to relate with others and to be happy.
And I'd like to reflect back to a comment you made earlier, Marco, about the importance of these rituals of human beings that have existed for millennia, gathering together in person, eating together, meals together, making space for that. We have to do that now. We have to affirmatively say, this is time for our family and not for the machine. We didn't have to do that before. Katie, I want to let you have the last word, since we're focusing on the future here. There are a lot of adults here in the audience trying to make things better for young people. What can we do best to support you and your peers as you become the next generation of leaders?
Okay. We need a culture change, right? And to create that, we need to start by normalizing the conversation. We need to make it okay to openly discuss our struggles with device dependency. We need to raise awareness. We need to share stories. Real stories resonate and help people understand that they're not alone in their experiences and can seek help if they need to. Education plays a significant role as well. Schools, parents, and especially us as young people need to be educated about the powerful impacts of digital devices and social media. And it's not just about saying, put the phone down, but instead understanding the why and the psychological effects behind it, and offering the tools and support to help manage it. And when it comes to responsibility, there's often debate whether it should fall on governments, the tech industry, schools, or parents. In reality, I think everyone needs to work together and really get involved. So if everyone, industry leaders, educators, policymakers, families, and especially us as young people, are all on the same page, 100%, it would make our efforts to tackle this issue far more effective. In the end, I do recognize that this is a significant challenge, but ultimately, it's about our future. And I do acknowledge that there are many experts in the room who are deeply concerned about this topic and are actively working to address it, and that gives me hope. But ultimately, we need to strengthen and create support systems that offer genuine guidance, whether through peer groups, accessible mental health resources, or policies that encourage healthier digital habits. This is a collective challenge, and only by working together can we shift the culture towards prioritizing mental health over the relentless pull of constant connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you all.